This is a discussion around the high ready position and CQB. And just to clear up any confusion that there might be, the high ready position is the rifle up underneath your arm and your muzzle about level with your eyes. You're actually looking at the target over the top of your muzzle. And this may be a little bit different for you if you have a longer rifle or if you have a suppressor on there. And when the target presents itself, you're putting the buttstock in your shoulder, getting down behind your sights and engaging that target or that threat. This position here is a high carry or a high port. This is a high carry or a high port. Neither of these positions are high ready positions. These two positions I also call not ready positions because it is actually not a ready position. The low ready position, rifle buttstock in your shoulder, and you're just simply looking at the target. Your muzzle is pointed about the base of the target or at the feet of the target. When you need to engage that target or that threat, you're just simply coming up behind your sights, and that is the low ready position. Carrying your rifle like this is what I consider a low carry or a low port, and also a not ready position, because again, this is not a rifle ready position. I don't care what you guys do, but I'm going to explain throughout the entirety of this video why I am mostly an advocate for most of the time a low carry position, especially in regards to being within the stack in CQB. So if you think about it, as I've just explained it to you, you can't really be in a low ready position or high ready position when you're in a stack, because in doing so, in either of these positions, you would be pointing the rifle at the person in front of you. So the majority of the time, what you see when people are moving around is a low carry or a low port or a high carry or a high port. I'm going to get into the reasons, situations where I believe during CQB, a high ready position makes a lot of sense, and I'll start to explain how that involves you taking your hand off your gun to complete other tasks and then moving to that high ready position. You should be training both the high ready and the low ready position, because you could find yourself in some of the scenarios or situations I'm going to explain in this video in that very situation. And you don't want the first time that you happen to be in a high ready position because you're going to get on your radio that you have to engage somebody, like I explained in one of my previous videos in my shooting. You don't want that to be the first time that you actually have to do that. If you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to feed the algorithm down below and subscribe to the channel if you're not already. You can also follow the link in the description to my website and sign up for my email list for my tactical gear that will be coming out in 2026. If you're in a team environment or you're working around other people with rifles, you really just need to ask yourself, are we okay with guys occasionally flagging people in the back of the head? Or are we okay with guys occasionally flagging people in the ankle or the calves? Because from a high ready position, probably more likely you're going to flag somebody in the head versus a low carry position or a low ready position that you're probably going to flag somebody in the ankles or the feet. Both of those things at some point are probably going to happen. I believe this is Navy SEALs. You can see this individual here. He's in a high carry, high port position. He actually kind of goes down into a high ready position, it looks like, and then begins to start ascending up the stairwell. I don't know how you continue to walk up the stairwell and not flag the person in the back while you're doing that, but maybe he assumed a high ready position off camera and then came back down as the person was crossing in front of him. But you could see where that could be problematic. And I don't believe that there is a significant benefit to being within a stack and being in a high carry or a high port position and then, you know, going into rifle in my shoulder and on my sights around other people, that it's something that everybody needs to be doing because there's just this really great big benefit in doing so. If you're the average person or you're a police officer, there's just a likelihood that you'll deploy with your rifle, but you don't train with it often, especially don't train with it around other people, then you should be very cautious in just assuming high ready positions or high carry positions because YouTube said that it's something that you should do, or you just think it's cool because you see special forces guys doing it or whatever. The likelihood that you're going to flag somebody in the back of the head is even higher than some of the videos that I'm going to show you here. This is FBI HRT making entry on a hostage rescue for training. The number 1 guy comes in, the number 2, and you can see the number 3 guy, he is in this high ready position. And if we're not all going to agree that he's flagging the number 2 guy in the back of the head right here, at least we can all agree that the margin for error in doing so is pretty small. This is GBRS making entry. You can see the number 2 guy coming in here in a high carry, high port position. And again, if we're not going to agree that he's flagging this person here, and maybe he isn't, again, could just be the camera angle, we can at least all agree the margin for error in doing so is pretty small. There's this idea also that being in a high ready position, I've heard people say, is faster at getting your rifle into your shoulder, getting behind your sights, and delivering rounds to a target. I believe this is a video of a SAS guy working with GBRS. They're working high ready, low ready standards, and I want you guys to pay attention to the times.
The standard for us is under 1 second. We'll see where we're at. Shoot ready.
Yep.
Stand by. 0.78. Low ready. Shooter ready. Stand by. 0.71.
And so for him, just based off going once at high ready and going once at low ready, he was actually faster, not even by 1/10 of a second, coming from a low ready position than he was a high ready. And one of the things I want to note here is his barrel in a high ready position is actually closer to being pointed at the target than when he actually started from the low ready position, which you would think would be an indication as to which would be faster. But in this case, even though his muzzle is facing farther away from the threat, or it's going to take him longer to actually be pointing his muzzle at the threat in this situation, he was actually faster getting to the target coming from the low ready position. This is an example of a proper CQB room entry by a couple Rangers and a couple SEALs, I believe it is. So I'm gonna let you guys watch this and then we're gonna talk about a few things. What you probably didn't notice is that this is actually two different takes. The camera view from the outside watching them take the room and the camera view from the inside of them taking the room is two completely different runs. I know this is the case because as the number one guy is making entry from the camera view from the outside, he's in this modified low ready short stock position, and you can see the shadow of the number two guy's hat casting on his right wrist. So the brim of his hat, the shadow is hitting the threshold, and it's also hitting his right wrist. The reason that I'm pointing that out is because this is the exact moment in the body position of the number one man as the rifle is actually in his shoulder and he is behind his sights. If we look at the number two camera position, again, a completely different run, he actually is in this high ready position. And if you look at his body position in relation to the threshold, he isn't behind his sights and his buttstock is not in his shoulder until about his shoulder is parallel with the threshold. And so we know from this video right here that at least for him, it's faster for him to get behind his sights and get his buttstock in his shoulder if he's entering in that modified low ready or short stock position. I've also heard people say that if they enter a room in the high ready position, that they can start engaging targets from right here as they are getting the rifle into their shoulder and getting behind their sights. When you are making entry into a room, at the very first possible moment as you're breaking the threshold, you are moving from the high ready position to getting the rifle into your shoulder and getting behind your sights. Or if you happen to enter in a low ready position, well, I guess the rifle's already in your shoulder and you're getting behind your sights. If you happen to go in this kind of short stock position, again, as soon as you break the threshold, you are getting that rifle in your shoulder and behind your sights. Sean Ryan is actually in that, what we would consider that high ready position. Remember, I told you guys that everybody that makes entry into a room is immediately assuming the rifle in their shoulder and getting to their sights, and this kind of stuff about I can shoot from the high ready position and I can be accurate is just nonsense in my opinion. And so this idea that you're gonna enter in a high ready position or any of the ready positions and begin shooting before that happens, it's actually extremely unlikely. And you should ask yourself, is that even a good idea if it was an option for you? We always kind of think about these things in the training environment scenario, these 10 by 10 rooms or these 12 by 12 rooms with paper targets that aren't moving and aren't doing anything. And sure, maybe somebody could replicate that they could consistently shoot from here as they enter and be accurate. Well, what if the room is a schoolroom and it's 40 feet or 50 feet long? Are you gonna enter in that way? What if the suspect runs across the room as you are entering the room in that high ready position? I doubt you're gonna be shooting at him like this, especially if there's other people around for sure, but I also doubt that you're gonna be accurate in doing so. What if, I've heard also people say that they're gonna shoot at people like this and then they're gonna stay on them as they're shooting and then get behind their sights. Again, you might be able to replicate that in a 10 by 10, 12 by 12 room where it's a paper target that isn't doing anything, but what happens, or just so happens, if you come in a high ready position and you let one round go and you happen to hit the guy in the chest or the head or wherever and he's dropping, do you think on a target that is hitting the ground in 0.25 to 0.45 seconds that you're gonna let off one round, continuously follow him as he's moving down while you're getting the rifle in your shoulder and behind your sights? I don't think that that is going to happen, and I don't think anybody can prove that they can replicate that would happen in an environment where they're entering a room they haven't been in, where it isn't a 10 by 10, 12 by 12, and they don't know what the target's gonna be or whether or not there's gonna be innocent people around the suspect. It's just not something that is going to happen. So what are the reasons for me where it makes the most sense to be in a high ready position in CQB? Well, first of all, we can all agree that there can't be anybody in front of you, right? Because otherwise you'd be flagging them if you're in a high ready position. And so if you're the point guy and you want to be in a high ready position, I don't see anything wrong with that, but that is one criteria that has to be met. It makes the least sense for other guys in the stack. This video is an example of just that. This is Marsoc making entry. You can see as the number 1 guy starts to make entry, the number 2 guy in this high carry, high port position is trying to anticipate, probably based off the number 1 guy's body language, which direction he is going. And the number 2 guy just happens to believe that the number 1 guy is probably going to go straight in this situation. And at the last second realizes, okay, hey, he's actually going to the right instead of straight. Now I have to assume this high carry, high port position so I make sure I'm not flagging the number 1 guy in the back of the head. But it could also be utilized while you're conducting CQB or just completing other tasks. So whenever I have to complete a task with my support hand and I have my rifle, I usually assume a high ready position. So if I am running after somebody with my rifle and I am probably going to have to key up on my radio, give a description or direction of travel, I am going to assume a high ready position because I can run like this and control my rifle. Pretty much impossible and probably won't feel very good trying to do that like this. If I am conducting a reload, right, I am more than likely going to assume this high ready position to do that, again, because I can control my rifle. If I am shooting and I need to clear a malfunction, I see that I have a malfunction, I'm immediately going down into a high ready position. Maybe I'm stripping that magazine, maybe I'm ducking down or getting behind cover, and then I am working my bolt. And then I'm getting my gun back up, and then I'm getting back into the fight from here. Here's a short clip of me doing solo CQB. I'm approaching this door that is cracked open. I need to utilize my support hand in order to do that and maintain positive control of my rifle. I am going into this high ready position and then I am working that door. Again, I'm not a big believer that I'm going to be shooting from a high ready position because I'm already committed to getting the buttstock in my shoulder and getting down behind my sights, and that is happening just way too fast. If you are running, you sometimes see guys running like this. There's nothing wrong with that. There's also nothing wrong with running with your rifle in this low carry position, but you can do that when you happen to have 2 hands on your rifle. I haven't seen all rifle competition shooters shoot their rifle and move, but the ones I have seen, it seems like the majority of their time, they're actually running in this low carry, low port position, and then they are going through the low carry, low port position into the low ready or through the low ready, and then getting that buttstock in their shoulder and getting behind their sights. If it was absolutely and without question faster to go from a high ready position to putting rounds on target, I think that competitive shooters who only care about how long it takes them to put rounds on target would be doing that and that only. Here's a competition shooter using the high ready position. Why is he utilizing the high ready position? Well, because his support hand is occupied and is not helping him control his rifle. So in order to get more control out of your rifle while his support hand is occupied, he is moving in a high ready position. If I didn't already make it obvious in this video, my opinion is that it makes the least amount of sense to be in a high ready position when you're within a stack moving around people. I think we can all agree that nobody can be in front of you when you're in a high ready position, but even being in a high carry or high port position inside of the stack and then having to wait for that person to clear in front of you just to move through the high ready position to getting your rifle in your shoulder and getting behind your sights, I don't really necessarily understand what the major benefit is there to the extent of which everybody needs to be doing it or this is absolutely the better way of doing it. I do believe, and you should, be training both high ready and low ready positions because you could find yourself in situations moving from those positions to actually getting on a threat. When does it make the most sense, in my opinion, to assume a high ready position? When you are doing reloads, when you're working doors, when you are taking your support hand off of your rifle, a high ready position allows you to maintain positive control of your rifle without actually tiring yourself.